Good afternoon. It's a great pleasure to be here today. And first of all, I would like to tell you that I'm a professor of political economy, so I will try to deliver a lecture on economic theory. But please do not forget that there is not something more practical than a good theory. But before I begin, I would like to thank a lot to Tour de Meester for his great effort translating into Flemish my book on money, bank credit, and economic cycles. I thank you very much. I hope
it was a great pleasure, and it was a genuine education.
Okay, I hope that the book has been already published. Hopefully, it's the seventh country in which, or the seventh language in which the book has been translated. Now it's being printed simultaneously in Germany, Italy, and France, and we will see the Chinese edition very soon. Altogether, the book has been translated and will be published into 14 different languages. I'm the first surprised for the success of this book. I wrote the book in 1997, and I think that thanks to the huge financial crisis and economic recession, the book is so popular nowadays. Well, all the problems we are suffering today began with something that happened on July 19th, 1844. In that date, in that fateful day, Peel's Bank Act was enacted in England. And Peel's Bank Act was a very important step forward in the right direction, because Robert Peel realized that all the problems England was suffering before 1844, I'm meaning all the economic problems of bubble bursts, bubbles, financial crisis, and economic recessions England was suffering before those days, were the result of a single fact. The result that bankers were issuing certificates of deposits of money in a greater amount than the true money that was deposited in the banks. In those days, the world money was gold, and bankers realized that when the gold was deposited in their vaults, it was idle for a long period of time in their vaults. So they were tempted to begin to issue a greater amount of certificates of deposit than the true amount of gold originally deposited in their vaults. Of course, these certificates of deposits were paper bills. I cordially disagree with James Turk. Those paper bills are not credit titles against anybody. They are just certificates of deposits, certificates of demand deposit. So they act as Mises called them pure money substitutes. They are in the same way that people have a 100% confidence on banks. Everybody is using these paper banknotes as if they were gold in their economic transactions. Of course, the temptation for the bankers was huge. Why not issue a greater amount of paper banknotes, of certificates of deposits? And this is what, in fact, they began to do since the creation of the Bank of Stockholm at the beginning of the 17th century, when they began to develop the business of creating banknotes, paper bank bills in a greater amount than the gold originally deposited in their vaults. This created, at the beginning, a bubble, because the injection of new money, a certificate of deposits, gives it's like a shot of drug, no, of heroin. The economy reacts in a way of that Alan Greenspan called to exuberant, irrational exuberance. Everybody is happy at the beginning, because imagine that bankers were spending these banknotes in consumer goods. Well, this would be affecting the prices of consumer goods, increasing them. But the problem is that these new paper bills were lent. This is the real problem, to entrepreneurs. So a lot of entrepreneurs were able to find very easy and cheap financing to any investment project, no matter how crazy it was. So everybody, all investors very happy with this new cheap financing. At the same time, consumers were very happy. They were getting a lot of paper money that they could use to consume. And also workers, very, very happy. A lot of demand for their services. Governments, very happy. They were seeing a lot of increase in their tax income. But what happened in those days? What happened is that the result of this inflation, this expansion of credit financed through the emission, the issuing of new paper banknotes, was increasing the price level in England, and it was cheaper to buy goods and services from the continental Europe. So a huge increase in imports and a decrease in exports was the result. And as a result of that, as Europeans, continental Europeans, were asking not for paper banknotes, but for real gold, bankers began to see losing their reserves in England, and then all of a sudden the bubble became a burst. This was the cycle affected England before 1844. So Robert Peel did a good diagnosis of the problem and found the solution. The solution was very easy. Let us require bankers to keep a 100% reserve requirement on the certificate of deposits, paper banknotes they are issuing. And this was the main the tenet, the main point of Peel's Bank Act. So in Peel's Bank Act, it was established that from then on, you could only issue banknotes, paper banknotes, exactly in the same amount of the gold originally deposited in the bank. This was established, as a matter of fact, for the Bank of England, which was the most important private bank in England. The law was even more demanding for the other private banks, establishing an overall absolute limit to the amount of paper banknotes they could issue. And a lot of, hopes were put in this legislation. English citizens thought that from then on all the problems would be solved. No more bubbles and bursts, no more cycles of economic financial exuberance, and recession would be repeated. But notwithstanding all the good hopes put into this legislation was a huge failure. Why it was a huge failure? Very easy. It's very easy to understand. Because the legislation did forget to require exactly the same, the 100% reserve requirement, not only for deposits, which was what was established in the law, but also to the deposits of gold, but also to demand deposits. That's a very important point. From then on, from the Peel's Bank Act, it was forbidden to print more paper banknotes than the gold originally deposited. But the legislation forgot to require the same for demand deposits. Why the legislation forgot to demand this 100% requirement for demand deposits? Just for one reason. In those days, in the first third of the 19th century, economic theoreticians did forget something that was discovered 300 years earlier by the scholastics of the School of Salamanca. The scholastics of the School of Salamanca in the 16th century already discovered that demand deposits in a bank do behave exactly the same way as banknotes, are part of the monetary supply exactly the same way as paper bills. They called it chirographis pecuniarum in Latin, which means in English pecuniarum, money, chirographis, written money. Those bank entries in the accounting books of bankers are money exactly the same as banknotes, paper banknotes, or gold. But this was forgotten. And as a matter of fact, I will tell you that economic theorists did not agree among themselves, among ourselves, that bank deposits are part of the monetary supply till the beginning of the 20th century, almost yesterday. And this is a huge pity, because against all the good hopes of Peel's legislation, this legislation was a failure. Since 1844, what bankers did was very easy. They just redirected their business from the business of over-issuing paper banknotes to exactly the same, from the theoretical point of view, business of issuing deposits, demand deposits. So if you remember your first lessons of accounting, you will remember, the asset side and the liability side in the balance sheet. What bankers began to do since then on was very easy, to create from out of thin air a new credit. For instance, 1 million euros lent to this gentleman. And right in the asset side of the balance sheet, credit to Mr. X 1 million euros against 1 million euros of deposits in their liability side of their balance sheet. Deposit created out of thin air, which is money created by the banker. When bankers began to do that, the English citizens were in a state of despair, because they could see that bubbles did continue, and that the periods of irrational exuberance repeated again and again. Huge malinvestment was created, and after that, new financial crises and economic recessions arrived. Whenever a financial crisis arrived and an economic recession, people lost entirely the confidence of bankers, were to demand their gold. The gold was not there, and then we had a bank run, what we call in Spanish, una corrida bancaria. And everybody remembers the movie Mary Poppins. You might remember Mary Poppins with the two children with the 2 pennies, running out of the bank, and then everybody losing the confidence of the bank. This was an example of what was being repeated again and again in the 19th century. Whenever these situations of financial crisis arrived, there was just one solution: to ask for help to the Bank of England. So in those moments, the Peel's Bank Act was suspended, because the Bank of England was the lender of last resort. The bank was created in order to give support to private bankers whenever problems arise. In order to give support, the Bank of England needed to be able to create from scratch all the necessary liquidity to bail out bankers with problems. And this was not possible, of course, with gold. There is no way to create from scratch gold. So from then on, we can now understand very clearly the evolution of the historical the historical evolution of the monetary system up to the present time. Because in order to be able to create from scratch all the necessary liquidity to bail out banks, it was necessary, first of all, to substitute gold that could not be created from scratch by paper money, a purely fiduciary monetary system, as we are having today. And at the same time, legal tender laws were enacted in order to force all of us to accept the payment through these paper banknotes. And the central bank was created as the lender of last resort that was orchestrating, directing the process of monetary expansion all over the time. And now till today, it's something unbelievable that beginning the second decade of the 21st century, all the financial and banking system of the world depends or is the result of this accident, historical accident, this error committed in Peel's Bank Act, forgetting to require the same, the 100% requirement for demand deposits, if it correctly required for paper bank notes. It's important to realize that money is generally accepted medium of exchange. So I also cordially disagree with James Turk in this point. Gold is currently not money, at least in the world we know. Because if I take my gold coin, I always travel with my gold coin. And I try to pay, for instance, the lunch of all of you here with this gold coin. Very probably the owner, the lady owner, will think I'm a crazy goldback, and she will not accept. Well, that would be the exception that confirms the rule. But if I take this, my monetary supply of euros, and I try to pay her with the euros, I'm sure she will take very quickly the euros. So now this is the money. We like it or not. And this is the problem we are suffering, that this is the money. And this is a result of this historical evolution that I've been trying to explain you. Only around 10%, roughly, of the monetary supply used by us is materialized in this kind of paper money, paper euros, banknotes, and coins. The remaining 90%, roughly, and this percentage is very similar in the States, Japan, and Europe, does not materialize in paper money or coins. The remaining 90% are just book entries in the accounting books of banks. It's what I call virtual money. Virtual money that, in the same way it's so easily created anew in a process of credit expansion. I resume formally when I explain I lend you 1 million euros against a deposit created anew. In the same way it is expanded so easily, it contracts so easily when the financial crisis arrives. Because if you give me back the loan and I'm not able as a banker to substitute this loan with a new one, the monetary supply squeezes, contracts. That's something important to remember, because when you think about these huge new doses of money created by governments nowadays, please remember that it's being created and injected in an environment of financial crisis and economic recession, in which always, theoretically, there is a huge contraction in the monetary supply. So, in a way, they are just accommodating with the new money the decrease in the monetary supply that is the unavoidable result of any financial crisis. That's the reason we are not experiencing hyperinflation. The problem is that when we begin to recuperate in normal circumstances, this new monetary base is used to multiply a huge credit expansion that will be able to repeat the bubble that we suffered since 10 years ago. I would like to try something heroic to explain you the heart of capital theory in 5 minutes. That's very important. Capital theory is very important in economics. It's like the bridge that connects the monetary side with the real investment side. And it's very important that we understand how this bridge works. In which way money does affect real investment decisions. This is what it is explained by capital theory. And in order to do that, we should understand first in which way savings in a free market tends to be invested correctly. When we save we decrease our current consumption. In fact, this is the definition of saving. And when we decrease our current consumption, the prices of consumer goods tends to go down and tends to decrease. If this happens, the profits of industries and companies producing consumer goods tends also to go down. And this is very important because it gives a signal all around the economy that tells entrepreneurs that they should redirect their investments from consumer goods industries toward capital goods industries that are farther away, temporarily farther away from current consumption. Please do not forget that most of the entrepreneurial effort, most of workers are not producing goods and services that will mature this year. I mean consumer goods and services. Most of the economic effort of developed nations is concentrated in producing goods and services that will mature not now, not next month, not in this year, but 2 years from now, 3 years from now, 4 years from now, even more years from now. And this temporal dimension of the structure of production is one of the most important tools of capital theory we should be very acquainted, familiar with. And it is very important because all Keynesian economic theory, all monetarist Chicago school theorists, they always forget this temporal dimension of the structure of production. If prices of consumer goods that are going to be sold and eventually are going to be bought this year goes down, it gives a signal that we shouldn't invest in producing goods and services very short term, but we should invest in capital goods industries that are producing for the more long-term future, 3, 4, 6 years from now. A lot of people, for instance, now is trying to design a car, the car that we will consume 10 years from now. Other people is, trying to mine the iron ore that will be put in a car that will be sold 3 years from now, and so on and so forth, till the last stage of the production when the car is assembled and sold this year. Cars that are sold this year began to be designed 10 years ago. People designing cars today, these cars will only mature and arrive the market in 2020, for instance. And this is very important because when savings do increase, this only affects to a small subset of the economy, those entrepreneurs and workers closer to consumption. And it does not affect entrepreneurs investing and working for the consumption that will be realized 10 years from now. It is irrelevant that consumption decreases to this year for all the people that is producing consumption goods that will mature only 10 years from now. And I wanted to address this idea because now you will very easily understand that this signal of the profits tells entrepreneurs when savings increases that they must redirect their effort to our more capital goods industries. At the same time, when savings increase, prices of consumption goods of this year goes down, which means that with the same wages, with the same monetary incomes, real wages goes up because it's possible to buy more goods and services at the reduced prices. So if real wages goes up, this is another signal that tells entrepreneurs, hey, now workers are relatively more expensive. You should substitute workers in the margin by machines, computers. See, this is a second very important signal. Who are going to produce the machines, the computers? Precisely the workers that are dismissed in the industries that are closer to consumption when savings goes up. And there is a third signal, economic signal. When savings do increase, the interest rate tends to go down because there is a greater supply of present goods, a greater supply of loanable funds, if you want. And if the interest rate goes down, the market prices of capital goods goes up because the market price tends to be the discounted value by the interest rate of the future stream of income of each capital good. I don't mind if it is a home, a factory, a truck, a lorry, or whatever. So if interest rates goes down, the market prices of capital goods goes up, which is a third very important microeconomic signal that tells everybody in the market they should produce not short-term consumer goods, but computers, machines, factories, trucks, and so on. What I have explained to you through these three microeconomic effects, it's nothing more, nothing less, why the so-called Keynesian paradox of saving is entirely wrong from the point of view of economic theory. What I'm telling you is that it is perfectly possible to earn profits even if you see your turnover, your sales going down because there is an increase in savings. How is it possible to obtain a profit if you sell less in monetary terms? Very easily, reducing your costs in an even greater amount. How? Substituting the most expensive labor by the most cheaper machines. And this is an idea that neither Keynes, nor Milton Friedman, nor in general all the macroeconomists never understood. I think I was able to make this heroic feat. By the way,
there is something here.
I'm very happy. That look really. I'm really proud. It smells good. You know, books do convey ideas and a spiritual message. That's the reason it's so important that you are able to touch it, to smell it, to connect your body with the spirit. Thank you. I'm really very happy. Is the happiest thing you could show me today is the book in Flemish. Well, now that you understand that, we will see by contrast what happens if this process of more investment is not triggered by an increase in savings, but is financed through credit expansion. What I mean is through the creation of, out of thin air, of new money materializing in deposits, in credit entries in the liability side of the banking system, acting, this is called through a fractional reserve. What happens? Well, at the beginning, the first symptoms are very similar to the process of good savings and genuine, real savings we just have explained. At the beginning, the entrepreneurs do receive new loans. They do not know if these loans are the result of new savings or if they are just being created through a process of credit expansion. What they see is that even bankers are offering them very easy terms for the new loans. Go ahead, here is the money available. Don't be stupid, use it. The interest rate is very low, even negative in real terms. So nobody would be surprised if entrepreneurs, by and large, take the money, not and run, and go to invest it. To invest it as if the total amount of savings in society would have increased, when in fact this didn't happen, because all was financed through a process of artificial credit expansion based in the creation of new deposits. So with this new creation, entrepreneurs began to shift all the effort and investments to investments that will mature in a more distant future. For instance, in the last bubble, the protagonist of the process in many countries have been the real estate sector. For instance, in Spain, we build every year between 700,000 and 800,000 homes. Exactly the same amount as in the rest of the European Union together. And we are currently having 1 million homes nobody wants. Were entrepreneurs stupid in Spain? No, they were not stupid, I could tell you. I know many of them. What happened is that a process of huge credit expansion was created, especially in the periphery of Europe. Remember that when we entered the euro, it was established as the target of the European Central Bank growing rate of 4.5% for the M3 monetary supply. Against that target, the total amount of money in Europe was growing during many years at 7%, almost twice as much as the original target. But this 7% increase was not evenly distributed all around the countries of the monetary union. In some countries, it was growing at a much greater path. For instance, in Spain, it was growing at 15% per year of new money materializing in credits created out of thin air, when at the same time in France or in Germany, it was only growing at 3 to 4%. Of course, this created a huge bubble in Spain, in Ireland, in Portugal, in Greece, in the peripheral countries. Happily, the backbone of Europe is this, in which we are seated. I mean, Germany, Holland, France, Belgium. And the malinvestment was not so huge as in the States, in this part of Europe. But it was really huge, and the harm done in the periphery of Europe was really, really unbelievable. And that's the reason we are now in a so difficult situation in these countries. Well, when the money is created out of thin air and given to the entrepreneurs, they began to invest as if savings were increased, when this didn't happen. And there are 6 microeconomic effects that inevitably, sooner or later, do revert the bubble and create a financial crisis and economic recession. I explain these microeconomic effects with detail in chapter 5 of my book, but you will understand the idea very easily. Of course, the process of the bubble can continue for many months, even years, if the rate of increase in new deposits is kept very large and increasing. But at the end, it is unavoidable that the new money reaches the pocket of consumers, because entrepreneurs do pay, you know, to buy goods, services, and to buy capital goods. And then in the third stage, fourth stage, at the end, the money finishes in the hands of consumers. And if they didn't decide to increase their savings, they begin to buy consumption goods. And what happens then? Happens something that is exactly the opposite of what I explained you just before. Prices of consumer goods begins to increase at a greater path than prices of capital goods. This is a signal that tells entrepreneurs, hey, the profit is in industries producing short-term consumer goods, not in long-term capital goods industries. So probably I was wrong why I put all my wealth in that. Probably yes, you were wrong. But second, if prices goes up, what does this mean in terms of real wages? That real wages goes down. So in the margin, it is cheaper to hire a worker than to buy a computer. So a second microeconomic effect that is affecting computers. But not only that, when prices goes up, what happens with interest rates? They add a prime to take into account this inflation and the new higher risk environment, we experience an increase in interest rates. And what this means in terms of prices of capital goods, exactly the opposite of what I explained you. They tend to go down. This is the definite signal to entrepreneurs that they were wrong. All entrepreneurs that took the new money to invest in more long-term maturing capital goods now realize those investments are not sustainable. This is the unavoidable reaction of the society, telling all entrepreneurs all around the economy that they were wrong, that there are not enough real resources saved to make profitable those so capital-intensive investments that were wrongly launched in the bubble years. And now you will realize how is the logic of the evolution in the cycle. All of a sudden, the market discovers, the market is very efficient. It's a process that I tell is very dynamically efficient. In fact, this is the title of my 4th book just published in England by Routledge, The Theory of Dynamic Efficiency. The market always discovers all this malinvestment because it is very efficient. And when it discovers it, what happens with the banks? The banks do have in the asset side of the balance sheet the market value of the loans they lent. And in their liability side, the deposits they created anew. When the market discovers that most of the malinvestment was wrongdoing and is not sustainable, it discovers that the true market value of the asset side of banks is just a fraction of what was originally thought. But at the same time, the liability side of the balance sheet of the banks is exactly the same. The market discovers that the bank system is bankrupt. And this is the financial crisis we experience since the Lehman Brothers and all the banks we've seen. And I do not want to mention any Belgian bank, Fortis, or any Dutch bank, ING, ABN. I will not mention any specific American bank, Citigroup, American International Group. I do not want to give any specific names in this lecture.
Why not?
But, for instance, in one country I will not mention, England, all the banking system with one exception went bankrupt. But this is nothing new. This has been the same experience, once after another, since the last 200 years, as a result of an accident of history, the error committed in Peel's Bank Act. By the way, Robert Peel was not a very original nor an intelligent person. He just applied the traditional legal principles that everybody knows, at least the old Roman law scholars. In any deposit of a fungible good, no matter if it is oil, we call it in Spanish almazara. It is the deposit of an oil, almazara. It's an Arab word. Many of our words in Spain come from the Arabs. They were only in my country 800 years. Do not be surprised by that. Or if it is a deposit of wheat, in a wheat deposit, we call it silo in Spanish. I don't know how you call it in Flemish or in English. It is a general principle of law that the man or the company receiving the deposit, what is called the depositary, gives you a certificate, that, for instance, a paper saying I deposited that amount of oil and so on, so that you can retire your deposit whenever you want. And it is a general principle of law that the depositary cannot take a part of what he or she receives to be used in he or she their own businesses, because if this is done, he commits a crime of misappropriation. That's a matter of fact. According to the Spanish Penal Code, it provides a 4-year prison term for you. But there is a small group of economic agents that obtain a privilege to act against this traditional principle of law, and those agents are bankers. What I try to do, in fact, is in my book, it's a very easy task. It's just to make what are the economic consequences of providing this privilege to this group of economic agents that we call banks to act against the general principles of law regarding the demand deposits of fungible goods. And of course, the most important fungible good is money. And the consequences is all the consequences we are suffering and we are very familiar with. And I repeat it again. It is unbelievable that in the 21st century, in the second decade, we are still using paper purely fiduciary public money, that the true voluntary private money, gold, has been expropriated to us, that there are legal tender laws, that there is a central planning agency called central banks that try to organize all the financial world from above as if it were the ghost plan of the Soviet Union. We have 100% pure socialism in the financial area, and everybody is very happy. I'm surprised why there are not huge manifestations like the ones we are seeing at the TV in Libya against Gaddafi. We have much more reason to make those protests than the people in the Arab world. It is unbelievable how stupid all of us are, accepting as something normal of the capitalist system the extremely abnormal situation. And I explained that the first symptom is I still have a lot of time, the financial crisis. And everybody understood what happened. Of course, in this situation, it was unavoidable that the central bank came to bail out the private banking system, to try to recreate the part that is needed in their balance sheets in order to avoid the whole monetary financial system disappeared, what would be a tragedy. So everybody understands what happened. Central bankers bailing out private bankers. They were created for that. What is strange is that very few people realize that the true responsible for the whole mess were central bankers. As I explained to you before, central bankers were created as lenders of last resort and also to direct, to orchestrate, it's like the director of an orchestra, to orchestrate the path of credit expansion. For years, they've been accepting a huge credit expansion. They were the responsible institution of all our current sufferings. But now they are appealing to the society as the only institution that was able to save the whole system. It's like the fireman, it's like the man putting into a firehouse and then going back like a fireman to try to put a stop on it. And we are so stupid that everybody, when hear the story in the TV, thanks Ben Bernanke, thanks Jean-Claude Trichet. Now we can sleep quieter this night because you save us of all this mess created by the greedy behavior of stupid bankers. No, bankers are not stupid, nor greedy, believe it or not, nor bad people, believe it or not. They are more or less as you and me are. And if you or me do receive the message that there is money available at 0% rate of interest, not only that, at negative rate of interest, nobody will be surprised if in the margin loans are provided to stupid, I will not say that word, to unsustainable, very risky projects. Now bankers, central bankers, how are reacting? Oh, this is the fault because there was not enough regulation. We need Basel II, Basel III, 5, 6, 7 in order to avoid that loans are given in a stupid way to risky projects. No matter how many regulations you enact, all of them will be a huge failure. They are only attacking the symptoms, but not the real causes of the problem. What would be the final decision at the end? Would we, the officials of the Central Bank of the Netherlands, will decide to whom we should give the loans? Do you think they will accept? This is the Ghost plan. All the economy entirely nationalized. They are not attacking the real problem. Nobody is telling what everybody knows, that the real problems has its roots in fractional reserve banking and in this error of Pill's Bank Act. After the financial crisis arrives, the second step in the cycle is the economic recession. And I would like to give you an optimistic word about the economic recession. According to Hayek, and especially Mises, the economic recession is already the recovery. So we are already recovering, do not doubt about that. The free market is a spontaneous order which is extremely dynamically efficient. The economic recession is a process that can be longer or shorter. It's a very hard process. There is a lot of suffering, but this is a process in which an army of entrepreneurs try to deduct which investments were profitable and which were not, and are trying to save from the errors what can be saved. A huge restructuring of the economy is spontaneously done by this army of entrepreneurs, that many in a despairing situation are trying to save what they can. For instance, in Spain, in just a year, 200,000 corporations have disappeared. Most of them related with the building sector. 5 million people have been unemployed. And this is very good, because they were formerly employed in unsustainable investment projects. This is the microeconomic idea that neither Keynesians nor monetarists nor any macroeconomist can understand, because they only analyze theoretically the problem in aggregates. And they do not see that the financial crisis is a microeconomic problem, not a macroeconomic problem. So the Spanish economy is already healed. It's like having a tumor. You have a tumor, then the tumor is taken from you by the physicians, and your body is healed, although very weak. This is the situation of the Spanish economy. Now, what we need to complete is to put these 5 million workers in new, sustainable, long-term, backed by genuine, true savings investments. From the building sector toward a constellation of new sustainable investment projects. And this can only be done by a free market protagonized by entrepreneurs in an environment of liberty. This is what we are doing. So we are already recovering. And the third step of the cycle is the budget crisis of governments. This is very interesting from the theoretical point of view. Well, politicians are very stupid people. They do not understand anything of what I am explaining you. In the years of the bubble, they were selling to the electorate, look, and I'm referring to Spain, France, America, every country. Look, you know, we have been able to defeat the vice of the cycles. Now we are in the new economy, in which everybody is going on well. We are increasing gross national product 3–4%. We have full employment, and the unions are very happy. There is a strong demand of labor. We cannot obtain all the labor we need, so we need 5 million immigrants from South America and Africa, the Arab countries. Everything is going up. You know, the taxes are going up at double-digit figures, increase per year. And they are surprised. They do not know the real cost of that. How is it possible that public income increases 12% per year if the gross national product only increases 3–4%? Nobody understands, but they say, do not tell anybody. We will sell to the electorate that we are doing very well, that we are even equilibrating the budget, and at the same time we can increase public expenses as we want. For instance, in Spain, connecting through the fast train all the capitals of Spain, including the capitals of the Balearic Island and the Canary Island. It was literally written by a very important political party in my country. So all of a sudden we are millionaires. Have you gone by plane to Madrid? Have you seen the T4 terminal? This is the best example of huge malinvestment, financed through credit expansion. What happens is that, for instance, the value-added tax, you know, at the end is paid by consumers, but it is advanced by entrepreneurs. In the period of credit expansion, a lot of new companies and projects that are materializing the malinvestments are created, and they are advancing the value-added tax to the government. Of course, that 1, 2, 3, 4 years from now, they will realize it is entirely wrong, and no consumer will buy them. But in the meanwhile, they were giving in advance, advancing a lot of money to the government. The same way, this huge increase in public income is a reality in the bubble years. When the financial crisis and the economic recession comes, all of a sudden, the public income decreases. For instance, in my country, in 1 year, it decreased 20%. And public officials, we cannot explain that. How on earth is this possible? They couldn't explain the increase before. They cannot explain the decrease now. There is a huge financial problem. In Spain, up to now, whenever we had this budget crisis, the reaction of the government was very easy. We were living in a world of monetary nationalism. There is a book written by Hayek entitled Monetary Nationalism and International Stability. I recommend you, to all of you, to read that book. Small book, 100 pages. If you want to understand anything of what is going on, of what I am trying to explain to you today. When the budget crisis came in the last bubbles, after the last bubbles in Spain, the reaction of the government was very easy. To devaluate the peseta from the night to the day, 20%, for instance. This was done in the 1990s. And citizens are so stupid that when 20% of their incomes and wealth is expropriated, all of a sudden, they leave their homes the next day so happy to work as if nothing happened. But in this last cycle, happily, this was not possible. And this was not possible because we were in the euro. Against very probably to the true wishes of our politicians, if they knew what the euro means as a discipline, we entered the euro. And this is something we should be thankful forever to God. Imagine, it's the first time I've seen a Spanish politician, no matter if he was from the right, from the center, or from the left, with his hands entirely bound, telling to the citizens the truth. And only for that, I will kiss Jean-Claude Trichet as forever. I would like to speak about my country, because this is being recorded and probably could be used against me. I will speak about Greece. Greece, the quintessential of the demagogic policy in the past. Being able to retire, Greece was like the Argentina of Perón. Everybody will be able to retire at 58, 55, 60 years old. Oh, but just a question. In Germany, they are retiring at 67. Don't tell stupid things. Germans are stupid. We in Greece are, intelligent people. Let us make a democratic election, please. Who is in favor of retiring at 58 instead of at 68. Unanimously. Who is in favor of having privileges, subsidies, more vacations? Democratic, success of the measures. Democracy is a system that can only work if there is a framework that can discipline all the agents participating in it. Not only politicians, but also citizens, voters, bureaucrats, and so on. And believe it or not, from the point of view of the peripheral countries, not from the point of view of Germany, the euro has been a significant step forward in the right direction. Because again, in this cycle is the first time in our history that we've been not able to react against the stupidities committed in the bubble years with autonomy of our monetary policy. The euro, from our point of view, is like a proxy of the gold standard. We are receiving the same discipline of the gold standard. Of course, I agree with you that at the end, the European Central Bank is monetizing the public debt. Of course, but it is being monetized in a context of a squeeze in the monetary supply. So up to now, we have not seen significant inflationary pressures. And also, it is monetized, but with a gun. I will monetize it to you, but you must decrease 5% the wages of all public servants, among them myself. You must frozen the pensions of everybody, which has been done in Spain. You must stop all the stupid public works of uniting all capital cities of Spain with a fast train, and so on and so forth. And last year I've been the happiest man in the world, looking how the discipline of something which is a proxy, very timid, of the gold standard, the good effects it has had in my country. Only from the point of view of Germany I would be preoccupied, because at the end, when the recuperation consolidates, all this huge monetary base that has been created could be used to materialize a new huge credit expansion, and so on and so forth. What the Central Bank of Europe is doing is exactly the same that is being done by the Americans, with three differences. First of degree, the stupidity of the Anglo-Saxon world in monetary matters has been huge since the Second World War. Look now at the face of Ben Bernanke or Alan Greenspan. Of course, I'm a strong believer. I think that the mercy of God is infinite, with one exemption that should go to hell, Alan Greenspan. The degree is the first difference between America and the Central Bank of Europe. The second difference is that no measures of austerity have been taken in the States, at least up to last week, when it seems that Barack Obama gave a change of 180 degrees, probably because he lost the elections. In Europe, the bailout is being done, but measures of liberalization, austerity, restructuring are being demanded, and that's really something that should be very welcome from the point of view of the peripheral countries. For instance, for that reason, I'm much more optimistic about the euro than about the dollar. And there is an illustration of that. Why on earth, every day we read an article by Krugman and all his sycophants saying, you are stupid Europeans taking austerity measures, Merkel is the most stupid president in the world, you are doing exactly the opposite that you should do, the euro is going to be a failure, next day the euro is going to be a failure, okay, I will stand 3 days, but after 300 days telling day by day the same, I'm sure that there is a hidden agenda after that. They are terribly scared that what will disappear short term is not the euro, but the dollar. They have a personal interest in the failure of the euro. And of course, do not interpret I'm defending the euro, that I am defending the euro, relatively. I am a goldback. What I'm telling you is that there is a strong difference between the dollar and the euro. Now we are in a historical moment because we are not clear about that. But the fate of the dollar now is in doubt. Almost 70%, I think, of the American public debt is in the hands of the Asians. It depends only on their true wishes, if they want to change, to spell. What about the Arabs? Look in the internet. Allah forbids to accept as payment dollars. No more green papers. Do require gold. Even if they decide no more dollars, gold and a little bit of euros. We'll see what happens. But I finish. I finish immediately. I'm sure that we will recover. Sooner or later, we are already recovering. The tragedy is that when we recover, we will begin to experience again a bubble. Bankers will begin to expand credit again. No central banker will dare to stop the fiesta, the party. This is what is called by Mises passive inflationism. People requesting credits to the bankers, bankers accommodating that demand from out of thin air, and the central bank doing anything, not doing anything in order to avoid be the culprit of a new depression. When they realize a new bubble, a new financial crisis, a new economic recession will come. And this again and again, if three unavoidable measures are not taken to redefine the whole financial system of the world. And these three measures are the following. First of all, very easy, to complete Peel's Bank Act where it was not completed. So the first necessary measure to redesign institutionally the financial system of the world is to re-establish a 100% reserve requirement, not only for paper banknotes, but also for the demand deposits. Demand deposits and equivalents. So true term deposits were not included. A true term deposit is not a deposit. It's just a loan to a bank, provided that the client is not told by the banker, this is a term deposit, but if you want, I will give you back. That would be the equivalent of a demand deposit, in which the 100% requirement should be reestablished. If this is done, the business of creating money, extracting money from mines and so on, keeping accounts, record accounts, making payments, would be entirely separated from the business of intermediation in investments. The real tragedy today is that these two businesses are together in the same institution. I think James Turk explained very well before. And when the problems in the investment side are discovered, it does affect all the payment system, with the risk of all the financial monetary system disappearing. This is what we experienced since 2007. So it's very clear, the first measure, which is a matter of fact, nobody should be surprised about just requiring the bankers to comply with the law, as I explained you before. If this measure is taken, we could give the second step to reform the monetary system, which is just to abolish all central banks. Because if we have a 100% banking system, central banks are not necessary anymore. There is no problem of bank runs anymore. If there is a bank run, the money will be there always. And central banks are central planning agencies for monetary matters. They want to create the optimum monetary supply in every moment, to fix what should be the most important and free market price, which is the interest rate. They fix the interest rate. They want to fine-tune the economy. All the fate of all our lives, of 5 billion people worldwide, depends on the whims, the success, or the failure of just one man, Ben Bernanke, or Alan Greenspan, or Jean-Claude Trichet, or a small group of men and women. Is this a free market economy? If this is a free market economy, I ask God to come here to tell me this is pure real socialism. So we need, and I finish, we need to complete the fall of the Berlin Wall with the fall of the central bank. And there is a last and final step. Who would be in charge of creating the monetary base? A colleague of mine, French prize winner of economics that passed away 4 months ago, Maurice Allais, proposed that the monetary base be purely paper fiduciary money printed by a public authority at a rate of 2% of increase per year. Of course, that would be a significant step forward in the right direction. If it is established in a constitution and there is a way to guarantee the government comply with that mandate. But I do not trust in any government. And what I propose as a third step in my book is just to go back to the purely free voluntary money chosen by the civilization century after century, to substitute the fiduciary paper money by a pure gold standard. Thank you very much.